Hi. Uh, yeah. Today we are going to discuss about MuleSoft integration in context to the API projects. Because as in when yesterday I discussed about the importance of MuleSoft in context to the integration part. Because MuleSoft is one kind of integration tool which can be integrated with multiple applications like CRM, like Salesforce, etc. All that. In context to that, when it comes to the MuleSoft, as I yesterday I have explained you about the code builder part, followed by the integration part itself is concerned. At the same time, I have given a brief introduction about API in the yesterday session, like what is application programming interface, right? So how the application programming interfaces are required, because application programming interfaces are required, especially when we are integrating any applications, right? So if you want to create any kind of communication between two different applications, this APIs we have to create, either it can be SOAP API, RESTful API at the same time, all that, right? HTTP API, all these will be created. So that part I have discussed with you. Now, when it comes to the MuleSoft in context to the integration of the Salesforce, wherein Design Center is something where we have to create different designs, because if you want to create any kind of new API specification, because we want to integrate with multiple applications where we need to create some communication, wherein if you want to create any new API specification, that's what something which we can do in the first level. At the same time, if you want to create any kind of GitHub responses, because if you want to access the application from any GitHub response, because GitHub is one kind of tool which is used for source code management, means whatever the required source code is, it acts as a repository to manage the source code for a particular application. So wherein we can connect with the existing GitHub responses. This is also something which we can do. At the same time, if you want to create an API specification wherein by importing the file from the local systems of the resources, that also can be done here. Now, today in today's session, being into MuleSoft integration, especially, this is something because as I could see, because many people are coming from IT as well as from the non-IT side. But even though when we are working on the non-IT side, because I could see some people are learning from non-IT side, right? It is a basic principle of creation of API project or specification which is required, because this is nothing to do with the person coming from IT or non-IT. So that's the reason why if we are transforming our role towards business analysis, because some people I could see people wants to transform their role to the business analyst side. So if you are a business analyst, wherein to understand the requirements and providing subsequent solutions, it's always important for us to understand the create new API specification. For them, it is useful. At the same time, as in I could see some people wants to transform their career into the development side, because MuleSoft developers is got something, someone has to do it. In that regard, even as be a developer technical side, we must be knowing about how to create new specifications also, because we have to create some API specification based projects so that it is easy for us to communicate with different applications. At the same time, even for admins also, because I can see one person, I think, right? One person wants to move towards the admin or back-end administration part, right? So even those people also be involved in it. So for everyone, either it kind of role, whatever are we going to perform, either you are a BA or a developer or a back-end admin team, or of course, it is not something relating for the architects, but having a knowledge over architecture is also required for us. So when it comes to when we are trying to understand about this, wherein it's always important for us to create some new API specification. So here you can see there is an option called create new API specification, wherein here we need to give the project name. Let's say, for example, we are working on some core banking application. Okay, core banking is a project name wherein we have worked on. Now, if you want to create a draft API specification, first of all, we need to specify the language, whatever the kind of language is something required and all. I'm just selecting RML one. Okay, that's what generally I'm doing. Else, what we can do is that if you want a new person, right? So, for example, if you want to generate RML and as well as OAS and all that, right? So, if you want something to be used as a visual interface, as in when you are a beginner, for example, right? Guide me through it, right? So, that's what something I have given. Now, if you want to create any kind of authorizations and all, we can create because authorize GitHub stores wherein code repository, which can be done because authorization is something essentially required. So when you are going to click on the create part, this is where generally API project in design center, especially when we are working on the MuleSoft in integrating to the Salesforce is what something which we are required to create, right? So this is where you can see the project called RML we have taken. So RML is what generally the edit what we can do, right? So even if you want to create any kind of new API, whatever the changes we want to make subsequently, we can make the changes. Along with this, if you want to create any kind of title, okay, for a particular API, okay, for example, connect, okay, this is what generally the title am I giving. So title is a connect which I have given. So wherein if you want to provide any kind of version or something of that sort, we can provide the version, right? 1.0 is the version over here. Next, if you want to select the protocol, as I told you, right, HTTP protocol, so PPI, right? So RESTful protocols and all, HTTP protocol was selected. Next, we need to select two different applications because nowadays the format of applications are two. One is about JSON applications and second is XML applications. Two different applications we can see. So now I'm selecting an XML application, not JSON or XML. XML is the application I have selected. Now, if you want to write down any kind of description in context to this, we can write down the summary over here. And whatever the subsequent documentation, if you want to add any kind of documentation, we can add it because whatever the required documentation that can be added. API documentation I'm talking about, right? This is where something we do. So once it is done, normally if you want to download this edit RMLs and all, we can download or else we can publish it or else we can share it to the people who are already part of the MuleSoft board. This is relating to the project what we have created in context to the API summary. But before we are publishing this to the repository systems and all, it's always important for us to understand about the schemas as well. Because API summary is what something which we did. But API summary, API schemas is also because we need to create, for example, we are creating a security schema. Okay, because if you want to authenticate and authorize, there is OAuth 2.0. Normally, OAuth 2.1, OAuth 2.0, right? So this is what something OAuth we have to create, right? So or else if you want to have any kind of basic authentication, right? So all these things can be done here. So that whatever the required responses you want to see, every responses can be seen. Make sure we need to provide subsequent security schemas is what something which we have to be created over here. This is something which being a user one we need to be known with. Okay, this is something which we have to be performed. Next, when it comes to the resources part, right? So, and as far as the resources is concerned, so if you want to create any kind of new resources, for example, API have different functionalities because get, post, put, patch, delete, option, head, right? So these are the different APIs can be created because get is an API where you can get the information, or if you want to post any kind of information and all, post is an API because APIs are used for the communication between two different applications. Means if you want to create any kind of communication for two applications, API is being used. We can use get, we can use post, right? So different things, right? So for example, we are using get post, right? So we are using get is a resource path wherein we are selecting and we need to provide some summary details, etc. So that also can be done in context to the resources are concerned. Next, if you want to create any kind of new data type, right? So because different data types when we are creating the database which is required, so either it can be an object or it can be a string or it can be a number Okay, because security numbers is what something we have to provide, right? So integers, numbers, and all everything is what something we have to be provided. Next, if there are any kind of groups, right? So any new groups to be created, etc., all that. So new group creation can also be done. This is how generally APIs followed by the security schemas to be created, resources, everything has to be updated if you are working on the design center being a user. So once it is done, we have two options. Either this can be published in the Git repository, as I stated earlier in the beginning itself, I have shown you, because Git repository, we have a tool. So wherein we can publish this information so that it can be shared from there to different applications. Else this can be shared to the people who are already members of the team in the application who are working as members so that people can see how we have created an API and what are all the different APIs were created can be seen to them. This is what about all about the session today. And tomorrow I'm going to discuss about the data graphs, right? So this is data graphs. Followed by this, we will be going for Exchange. Exchange at the same time, runtime managers, right? So that part I'm going to discuss in tomorrow's session. So if you have any queries, please go ahead.